Many Trump supporters have been called cult members. Can they be deprogrammed? Joining me now, cult expert Dr. Stephen Hassan. He's the author of The Cult of Trump. Also with me, former FBI double agent Naveed Jamali, Newsweek editor-at-large, and author of How to Catch a Russian Spy. Dr. Hassan, thanks for being with us. What is your definition of a cult, and how does it apply to those who support Donald Trump?
So my definition of a cult is on an influence continuum from ethical to unethical, and my work is with destructive authoritarian cults that have a pyramid structure, usually a leader at the top who's often charismatic, deceptive recruitment, and control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions that creates a new identity that's dependent and obedient. So it's a lot of words, but the important thing is that people are being made over in the image of the cult and are no longer able to think and reality test for themselves.
Right. And what does that mean practically? What is the long tail of that type of influence?
The long tail is a dissociative type disorder. I was in a cult myself. In fact, I fasted for 3 days for Nixon because my former cult leader, Sun Myung Moon, said God wanted him to be president. My heart goes out to the people who went there and said they would die or kill for God, because that was my mindset. And the good news is there's hope. People can come back to themselves, but the help of family, friends, and we also need to create a media flow that's honest and truth-oriented. And so there's a lot of work we need to do.
Listen, Naveed, there are going to be a lot of people who watch and say, well, he's out of office. Yes, there's the impeachment trial. But the reason that we're talking about it is because there's still this open question of how much influence he is going to have over the American populace, right? So for you, from your perch, as someone who thinks about this in terms of national security, what do you make of what Dr. Hassan just laid out?
Well, what I'm concerned about is I'm sure that there's a cult component to this, and we've certainly seen this, but honestly, what I'm concerned about is bigotry, racism, and white nationalism, which, I guess you can say it's a cult, but really, Alicia, these are long-stemmed, beliefs and ideologies that aren't fit into a box of a cult. I mean, one of the things that Trump came in and did was able to legitimize these feelings of racism and bigotry, the Muslim ban. We just heard Congressman Torres talking about one of his constituents who's on the verge of being deported. It's hard for me to sort of square this circle here and say that we should be focused on cults when really I think the concern about Trump is that he activated and legitimized racism, which unfortunately has nothing to do with a cult.
Dr. Hassan?
Well, I think that the cult of Trump has authoritarian cults who are influencing Donald Trump and his enablers, and whose base are actually an authoritarian cult. And that includes Christian right, who are dominionists, Christian nationalists, people who believe that God should be running America, not separation of church and state and human rights.
Naveed, conservatives are trying to recast the QAnon movement as, quote, patriotism and love of country. I wonder how you square that with what you just laid out.
I mean, I agree with the doctor. I mean, QAnon is it's a bunch of conspiracy theories, kind of with some small tentacles of reality. And when Donald Trump wasn't sworn in and there wasn't mass arrests, I mean, you can see it now. They're sort of floundering. But, and it's become sort of this basis for, unfortunately, some of the things that Trump pushed forward. And I think the Republican Party, from a political standpoint, is trying to figure out how to sort of tamp that down and not make it look so conspiratorial. But it is, and they're not going to be able to get away from that. I mean, QAnon is not based on any reality. I mean, the doctor's right here. These are a level of cultish behavior. But unfortunately, just to back that up, QAnon is not the majority of all Trump supporters. I mean, again, I just bring it back to racism and bigotry. This is something we have to confront independently of QAnon.
Well, Dr. Hassan, perhaps...
I'm 100% in support of human rights. And it really comes down to authoritarianism on the right and on the left. versus democracy and human rights. And I believe love is stronger than fear and hatred. And by pulling together in a love of America, I think there's hope if we work together.
But that also, Dr. Hassan, I mean, there are forces like the neo-Nazis that are already rushing in to recruit former QAnon followers. How do you then prevent them from, ending up being part of another form of extremism?
Great point. So I'm very pleased about the deplatforming of Trump and many of the enablers and tens of thousands of accounts. I'm very glad that Amazon threw Parler off. I believe it's up in servers in Russia right now. But we want to empower former members who have done their homework, who understand brainwashing and mind control, because former members are the most persuasive to other white supremacy neo-Nazis and who can help figure out a de-radicalization program to scale. The problem is scale. Right now, I'm just telling all family members and friends who have loved ones involved with any of the Trump-averse to just reach out to them and say, hi, I miss you. I'd like to be your life, and not attack them, say ha ha or anything like that, but start to build bridges because they need an exit ramp.
Naveed, I have about a minute left. I'm going to give you the final word.
It's hard for me to sit here and just be like, that's the way to go. Look, when you have Tom Cotton denying the 1619 Project and Trump releasing the 1776 Project that's trying to rewrite our history, this isn't about reaching out to people who may be misguided. This is racism. This is bigotry. It's something that's founded in this country. And when we talk about cult, we're missing the point about the larger conversation that needs to happen. This isn't about, bringing someone back into the fold. If someone is a racist or a bigot, I don't want to reach out to them and say, let me tell you how I love you. I mean, that's just a ridiculous point. We need to address racism. We need to deal with the history. We need to deal with the foundations of this country. We need to have an honest discussion about racism and how it came to be legitimized in many ways under Trump. That's the starting point.
All right, Dr. Hassan and Naveed, I wish I had more time. That is all the time I had. Thank you both, though, for getting us started on this conversation.